Hey, how's it going, AP students? This is Mr. Wood. Just going to make a recording for you right now. How do I look there? Am I looking pretty good? I always look good. Hey, can you help me over here? How do I look, buddy? Do I look good?
Mm-hmm.
All right. And Mr. Wood's going to help me out here. We're going to do some words here. Oh my, is that the peas are cooking over there? Or they're burning? Can you turn it down? I got that. All right. So, come on over here, buddy. This is my assistant, Mr. Wood. Are you Mr. Wood too?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's look at our first word that we have to look up. Can you read that one for me? What does it say?
Maharajas.
Maharajas. Maharajas. Well, you know what, Cesar and my AP students, I'm going to tell you what Maharajas are. Maharajas, I'm probably mispronouncing that, Maharajas were elites in India. So they were elites, kind of like nobles in India. So not the king, but the elite, the next level down. These were people who the British would help assist and put into power, and they would support British rule. So Maharajas were kind of people who were in India who would support British rule, and this was part of the reason why Britain was able to get a lot of power in India. Did you know that?
No.
No? Do you know it now?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's pause there for a second. Oh, we forgot historical significance. Mr. Wood always forgets historical significance. The reason why these guys are important is the Maharajas were significant because by the British giving them power, giving them land, these are like the ancestors of the Zamadirs. These guys were then able to help Britain take over all of India, which will be hugely important in our modern era. All right, we have another helper. Can you tell me your name? What's your name? You're not going to say yellow? All right. So
Miss Wood.
Miss Wood? Oh, yeah, we have Ms. Wood and Mr. Wood and me in the middle. Okay? We all know who the good-looking one is. Not me. All right. So right here, Mr. Wood, what does this say?
Sepoy Mutiny.
Sepoy Mutiny. This is kind of a tough one. The Sepoy Mutiny. Yeah, a little violent one here, guys. What actually happened was Britain had control of India for many years. Then in 1857, there was a rebellion where the Indian people rebelled and they fought against the British. What actually happened was the British had these guns that we see right over here. They had the guns, which were muskets at that time, and you had basically like a little thing of gunpowder you had to put into the gun. Well, on the inside, they used fat that was actually from pigs. Ooh, kind of gross, huh?
Ew.
But the thing was, Hindus in India are vegetarians. They don't eat meat. All right? You hear that? I think Lily Garcia will appreciate that one. So, they didn't eat meat. And Muslims, they didn't eat pig. So the fact that this fat came from a pig and they were opening it and had to put it in their guns, they could not do that. And the British were basically like, nope, you're in our military, you have to do it. So this wasn't the only thing that made the Indians rebel. They also weren't treated fairly by the British people in the military, and the British were using many, many Indian troops to fight against the Indians and to keep them under control. So what happened was the Indian troops rebelled and they fought against Britain, and this led to Britain becoming less powerful. The British crown had to come in and basically regain control over Britain, but the Sepoy Mutiny was a big rebellion which showed that the Indian people could rebel against the British Empire, which was hugely powerful in the modern era. What do you think about that one, guys?
That's a pretty hard word.
Yeah, it is a tough one. Our next word is Dutch in Indonesia. So the Dutch, those are the people from the Netherlands. We remember the VOC, the Dutch East Indian Company. Well, the Dutch were able to go in with the East Indian Company, but then they colonized and took over large parts of Indonesia for the spice trade and to make a profit off it. So basically the Dutch, they kind of come in, they're like a republic, the VOC isn't really like a country, and they're kind of being nicer than the British and other people. But then they engage in full imperialism, which means they take over large parts of Indonesia for spices, for profit, for strategic locations for their ships. And the Dutch basically take over Indonesia. Here we see a sign of resistance against the Dutch, but the Dutch have power in Indonesia, and they used that power to get trade, and they put down rebellions. It's very significant because it shows the Dutch, like the British, like the French, are fully engaged in imperialism and are taking resources from other people to make themselves rich. What do you think about that one? Sounds kind of mean, doesn't it? Yeah, I agree with you. Next, we're going to look at the French in Indochina. Now, Cesar, did our grandpa, your grandpa, my dad, fight in the Vietnam War?
Yes, he did.
Remember that. My dad, your grandpa, fought in the Vietnam War. This is French Indochina right here. Vietnam is part of it. Now, France was able to go into this part of Indochina. They were able to take over it, much like the Dutch took over Indonesia. The British were taking over lands in India. And again, they exploited it for their natural resources. And the French had other colonies in places like Algeria as well. But the French were able to take over this large section of Indochina. Originally, the Chinese had a lot of control. Then the French will take over a lot of control of Indochina. And they'll have this for a long time during the modern era. And what happens is they'll have this land all the way up to World War II and beyond. Historically significant because it shows how the French were one of many European powers to take over a lot of land in Southeast Asia at this time. Now, I brought up Grandpa. You know why?
Why?
Because after the Vietnamese kicked the French out, they become communist, and we'll talk about that a little later. And your grandpa, my dad, actually ends up fighting a war in Vietnam, which comes because they want to get their freedom back. So it's historically significant because the United States will even become involved in Indochina in the 1960s.
I just realized that this thing's in Spanish.
No, actually French.
Well, French.
Because French Indochina. That's why the map is like that. Excellent observation. All right, Mr. Wood, what does this next one say? It's a tough one.
Philippine-American War.
Philippine-American War. Probably didn't know this one existed, right?
No.
Do you know that the U.S. fought a war in the Philippines? Do you know the U.S. used to basically own the land called the Philippines?
They did.
How'd that happen? All right, here's our next word. Philippine-American War. What happened was the United States fought in the Spanish-American War. And the Spanish-American War, the Philippines used to be owned by Spain before the Spanish-American War. The United States was able to defeat the Spanish, and they told the Philippines they would become free. Then the United States changed their mind, and they said, no, we're going to take control of the Philippines. So for 3 years, the Filipinos fought against the United States to try to get their freedom. The United States fought against the Philippines, saying they were going to control the Philippines. And like a lot of imperial powers, the United States took a lot of natural resources away from the Philippines. One general, his name's right up here, Emiliano Aguinaldo, was one of the people who fought against the United States. He fought for the United States first when the U.S. was fighting against Spain. The Philippines thought they were going to become free. Then the U.S. said, no, we beat Spain. Now we're going to own you. And this is historically significant because it shows the United States moving from a nation more fighting for freedom now to becoming more of a nation that's showing itself having some imperialism and taking over other lands. We don't like that, do we?
No.
It's not very nice, is it? No, I don't think so either. All right, so that's pretty significant for the United States. It also shows that the United States is now becoming a major power in the world like the other European nations. Our next, we're going to talk about in the 19th century or 1800s, the Russian colonization of the Americas. You're probably thinking, what? Yeah, Russia's over here, Siberia. Russia actually crosses over into Alaska, all the way down to Canada, even part of the United States, and takes a lot of this land, fights against the natives who are living there in Alaska, and is able to get a lot of especially furs that were quite valuable in Russia at that time from the animals. So Russia was able to do this, and it shows that Russia is able to expand their land even further than Asia into the Americas. Now, eventually, this will become very significant because Russia will sell Alaska to the United States for money, and Alaska will become part of the United States and not Canada. It's also significant because it shows that Russia was also trying to be an imperial power, just like many other European areas, Japan and the United States, in the modern era. Here we see British West Africa. So it's important to know that Britain became the major imperial power of the modern era. And Britain was able to take over large chunks of land like Sierra Leone, the Gold Coast, and Nigeria in West Africa. They were able to take these lands, use it for their resources and their strategic locations in this area, and Britain was able to get natural resources out of these areas and still maintain as a very main imperial power. Significant because during this era, Africa will become colonized in the modern era by all the European nations after the Berlin Conference of 1898-1899.
Bigger, Mr. Wood, I have a question.
What is it, little Mr. Wood?
Why is there these,
All these years. Yeah, these are the years where Britain was able to take over these lands. So we can see it's in the modern era, all the way from 1869, 1859, 1860, 1870, all the way up to 1901. That was an excellent question. It shows the significance in how Britain was able to take over these lands in the time we call the modern period. That was a good question. All right, let's move ahead. You know, little Mr. Wood, I got my years wrong there. The Berlin Conference was from 1884, 1885. This picture.
1884, 1885.
It is. And this map right here shows a good picture of the scramble for Africa, as European nations were fighting to take over pieces of Africa. And at the Berlin Conference of 1884, 1885, what happens is the European powers divide up Africa, and here we can see the European nations and the lands that they all take in Africa. Now this is significant because basically what happens is Africa gets cut up, it gets gutted, and resources get taken out of the African continent. All over. We see the Belgian Congo there. We'll talk more about that. It's a great example of it. Well, a horrible example, but a good example of this kind of imperialism that happens during this time. This wouldn't have been possible without the invention of the machine gun or the Maxim gun. This is going to sound horrible, guys, but it allowed Europeans to kill a lot of the Africans who were resisting against them at that time. Yeah. And the reason why it took Europe so long to get into Africa was because before this, when Europeans came in, they got diseases like malaria. And with the invention of the machine gun, Europeans are able to enter the interior of Africa and take over a lot of it, often doing the same trick the British used in India by paying local rulers and bribing local rulers to rule over the other people in Africa. Pretty manipulative, pretty tricky. Very significant because this will definitely, with all the resources that are taken from here that are used in the Industrial Revolution, Europe definitely gains power while Africa's power goes down, and many people do die in Africa this time. It's quite sad. Let's go to our next word. This man right here, well, he looks nice. His name's King Leopold II. Not a nice man at all.
He looks like he has a beard.
He definitely has a beard. Definitely got a beard. King Leopold II was the King of Belgium, and he took over the free Belgian, the Congo Free State. The Congo Free State in Belgium, and he was basically there to get all the rubber that he could get out of the Congo to make the most money out of it as possible. Alice, I'm going to ask you to leave the room while I show these next pictures. I asked my kids to leave the room to show this picture. What often happened in the Belgian Congo would be the people of the Congo were forced to get rubber out of the trees, and they didn't want the soldiers to waste their bullets. They would cut their hands off if they didn't get enough. 10 million people end up dying in the Congo as the King of Belgium, King Leopold II, takes power. And this is a disaster for the people of the Congo, as there's blood that they're giving up. So Congo can have more rubber and can help them in the Industrial Revolution, and King Leopold II becomes very rich off this. We're going to stop part 1 right here, and we'll get to our next video in just a minute.